everybody. My name is Jenny. Welcome to Miami Lit Podcast. For today's episode, we are joined by the film directors Max and Nelson of the film A La Calle and Dr. Federica Davila, one of the co-founders of the Green Cross.
Hello, my name is Nelson Gonzalez Navarrete. I'm a filmmaker and I am Venezuelan, but I live in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name is Max Caicedo, also co-director and producer of A La Calle, filmmaker, and from San Francisco.
My name is Federica Davila. I am 27 years old. I live in Caracas, Venezuela, and I am a doctor currently working in the public health system.
Thank you. So you're all three of you are here, obviously, for the documentary you have coming out in 2 days, A La Calle. Tell me a little bit about how this was born.
Max, do that.
I'll take this. I feel like I'm the one who gets this question all the time. Greg Little, who is the executive producer and has Priority Pictures. He was looking for someone for quite some time to do a project on Venezuela. He had close ties to the Lopez story, and so as a result, he felt the desire to tell Leopoldo Lopez's story, but also to kind of do a larger project on Venezuela. But he couldn't find anyone to do it. I guess all the normal guys said it was too crazy, too dangerous, too scary, because of the obvious and well-publicized issues with journalists and anyone, kind of embarking on any projects that were against the government or even critical of the government. So we just happened to get connected, and I happened to be working with Nelson at that time. We had just started Vitamin together, and so it was kind of like this very perfect serendipitous moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'm pretty sure Nelson would be interested in doing it, and I'm pretty sure he can. If I know Nelson, he can make this happen. So. And that was kind of the beginning of it. Just proving that we could actually do it was the first step. Proving that we could get a team in Venezuela, film, and then get that footage out was our first sort of hurdle. But once we were able to do that, then the 3 to 5 year journey began.
Yeah, and congratulations, because the result is incredible. The hard work is it's very obvious. It's amazing. My first reaction when I saw it, I was like, how did they do this and still be alive? It must have been. Were you scared at all?
So part of the decision we made was Nelson and I actually didn't go down and film this in Venezuela. We did do some filming, but we were in other places, not in country. And so part of that decision had a lot to do with safety. And it also had a lot to do with sort of trying to maintain the longevity of this project.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing this interview in Spanish, but if we were, you would hear my accent.
We can switch back and forth.
Oh, no. I'm just saying you would hear my accent, and it's a thick gringo accent. It's not fooling anybody. And Nelson has his own
I see what you're saying.
For why being in Venezuela was not so safe for him. And so, it's not something that we could just go down there and sort of blend in as documentary filmmakers. It just wasn't going to happen, at least for me specifically. But also Nelson, again, like I said, has his own thing. And so we also aren't familiar with living in a dictatorship, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Just for me, I take a lot of things for granted living and growing up in the United States that I don't really have. I've never really dealt with a political police that's out there trying to find people like me doing critical work of the government. And so, Nelson believed it was the best idea, and I agreed, that we empower local creatives and local filmmakers within Venezuela to capture all the material, the majority of the material. And then we just sort of guided them from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Not the easiest, but definitely the safest in terms of, and then the best for the longevity of the project, because we had a few incidents, and they weren't nothing crazy. Everything turned out okay, but I think part of that is that there wasn't like this like very centralized film operation
Right.
going. Nelson was very good at just keeping each team kind of isolated and siloed in their own specific tasks so that there wasn't this like um, sort of big project to uncover, so to speak.
I'm sure that must have been super empowering for the people that you were dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. I guess sorry, I was trying to
No, it's
stabilize my
okay.
connection, but I think I got it. I'll try not to repeat what Max said, but we definitely relied on the skills of our team, and their their flow in the country. Because one thing is to do a documentary about a dictatorship, and one thing is to do a documentary about a dictatorship in Venezuela. You
Hmm.
add all the layers of like violence, of crime, kidnaps. There's all the things that happen behind the scenes people don't realize. So we had to like smuggle hard drives in and out of Venezuela. So our operation was very tight. We try to keep it as like small as possible, as Max said, but also as diverse as possible. I try to add filmmakers, but also journalists, also like artists, street artists that were able to blend and not be like questioned. Because in
Right.
Venezuela, unfortunately, you can't even film a ad of Chavez. Like our team member got in trouble because he filmed something of Chavez. Imagine there's no freedom of press.
Hmm.
So imagine us coming in and out of the country with cameras. It would have been possible. So we did get a lot of footage that we didn't use, but imagine the risk of the team. So we actually got really lucky that we found a great team.
I feel like you
And
could probably make a documentary about your documentary.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Sorry, Max, I interrupted you.
oh no, and I was gonna say, I think one thing that Nelson kind of the one thing that Nelson left out is like, we're here keeping abreast of the situation through all the people that we knew there, right? Because the news here you'd hear something here and there, if you're trying to keep up with events at the rate of the news coming out of Venezuela or through Western media, you're going to fall behind. And I think one thing that was really helpful to Nelson, well, to me and to Nelson, but like I think Nelson specifically was like the guy who was like getting injected with all the information every morning was just everyone on the ground kind of giving us or keeping us apprised of what was going on politically, socially, humanitarian, just keeping all that kind of in real time for us so that we could track the story much more closely and then give, direction that made sense to our team members.
Right.
Yeah, WhatsApp. Shout out to WhatsApp that kept
Yeah.
us communicating.
Yeah.
Twitter.
That's how you guys all kept in touch through WhatsApp.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And are those people still there today? The people you worked with?
Yeah, unfortunately, we
here.
can't display. Yeah, Federica, she's our talent. She was one of our subjects that we follow. I would love to get some stories from
Federica
her.
feels the savior of the whole thing, and we'll get to that because what
But
you
yes,
did
our
is
team. Some
incredible.
of our team some of our team is credited. A lot of the team, maybe more than half, decided not to be credited for security reasons. So some are in the country, some are not.
Right. Um, I want to jump into one of those the opening scene where everyone's just having like a normal conversation, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose and everybody starts running away. What was it like to see that for the first time for you as a filmmaker?
I don't know. I don't know who wants to answer that, but for me, actually, every footage that we got was crazy. That's not the worst scene that we saw. Every time we would see like footage of hospitals, footage of the border, footage of prisons, that we never showed. It was just like surreal.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how my country got to that level. Streets where I walked one day got to that. It's a little scary. But for my team, I think it was I don't know. I was just giving them like medals of honor, that they were able to catch that footage, because it was definitely scary, and I just felt proud, because they're like
Right.
they didn't care, they're like all for the story. So yeah, I felt very lucky to be blessed with a great team.
Yeah, I think that's amongst all your accomplishments with this film. I think, at least for me, one of the most impressive things was to see everybody coming together, just a sea of people, and how much hope that must have brought them in that moment, you know? But then as you the film progresses and you guys show, you know, the more up-to-date situation and how nothing has really changed, what do you think that does for the people there?
Like, very good. I want to take over.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can jump here because I don't know what the answer, how, like, I don't know if the answer of this gets maybe a little
Yeah.
political, but I do think that the idea of change was really like right there
Mhm.
at the, it was almost like everyone just thought it was like one more day, one more march, one more week, maybe even 2 months out. Like they really believed it was right there. And I can't speak as a Venezuelan, but I can speak as a filmmaker kind of being close to everyone and communicating with everyone. And the feeling that I got from everyone was like, like, all right, it's just a matter of time. Like, we're just like right up knocking on the door. And then, yeah, and then it didn't happen. I don't know that I could accurately express the disappointment that that created for everyone that we know and that we were in contact with, and the disillusionment I think that that creates. Um, I think there's this feeling that the popular will, or that all these people in the streets, eventually someone will listen, eventually you will elicit change, and there's that like hopeful optimism that happens, and it's almost like crazy. You see that many people in the street, you're like, okay, what's the question? Like, where's the debate here? Like, let's just move on with this, right? But I think that that's like a very Western, or like maybe not Western, but like I think that's a mindset that's from people who live in very privileged places who still have functioning democracies.
Right.
Venezuela
Who
was a
have
functioning
rights.
democracy,
Yeah.
right? People who have rights, exactly. Venezuela was a functioning democracy. I'm not taking that away from Venezuela, but it's kind of moved away from that, and
Mhm.
so the expectation that these sort of mass mobilizations of people and the the ability to create change electorally, like that doesn't exist there. And so I think even though it was a very powerful symbolic visual message for the world and for Venezuelans, it, like, the hard reality was there is a dictatorship, and the dictatorship is kind of playing life and death for itself if you think about it. Like, internationally, you know the international community is kind of has kind of completely, exiled them from the larger communication. They're being investigated for crimes against humanity at The Hague. I mean, from Maduro and his regime, a lot of them, they're just holding on to power because when the moment they leave, you know what I mean? Like, that's it for
Right.
them. And so they're going to hold on until the very end, I believe, personally. And I think that, but the fact that reality like fully set in, I think, after what happened with Guaido and everything that happened didn't achieve the change. I think everyone just kind of like started to feel um like, oh man, like, if Guaido couldn't do it, like, who can? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because he was, yeah, he was larger than life.
Yeah, it makes you feel like if all those people in the streets can't cause change, what's left for the rest of the world? You know what I mean? Because I feel like Venezuela, um, what they did may be possibly the first example of people actually really coming together for a common cause. So it's bittersweet for sure. I know, Federica, you have to go soon, so I'm gonna jump to you so we can get the most out of our time together. Tell me about that first day you decided to go out into the street.
Well, at the beginning, we were very few people. The first day we were four, and we just took our backpacks from school, the backpacks we use for university, and filled them with whatever we could find in any pharmacy, like gauze or alcohol, band-aids, whatever. Very basic. And we jumped to the street and started helping. And that very first day, it was amazing how people started feeling like protected just by having a medical student nearby who was able to access if they were injured or whatever, and could help. So it was amazing, the feeling that we got. And we said like, oh my God, this has an amazing potential, and we have to make it stronger in order to be able to help more and more and more people. So then we started growing, more people started joining, basically medical students. But when this movement started gaining more and more power, even our professors from school started joining. And that was amazing, because we had the teachers from our classrooms joining us and teaching us in the streets with these patients who really needed help. And being there made could make and did make in several opportunities the difference between, oh my God, lights gonna, maybe power's going off. if I get down, the power's off. So it was amazing how our teachers joined us, and the streets became our classrooms. Even the parents of a lot of medical students started joining. My dad joined the Green Cross, and he was there with me, teaching me how to treat the most basic and the most harsh injuries. And that was the feeling that we got from the hope of the people, the confidence they had of having us there was amazing. So that feeling just came stronger and stronger and stronger. And every day we had less fear, and we had more, we were willing to go out to the streets and risk whatever we had to risk in order to put our grain of salt and contribute to the wealth of the people.
Right. Was there ever a day or a moment where you felt really scared, or were you questioned what you were doing?
Many many days. Sometimes it got so dangerous that the adrenaline of the moment didn't make it feel so dangerous. But when you look backwards and say like, oh my God, I was in the middle of guns and fire, and it was terrifying. I think it was more scary after it ended than at the moment when you were present there. Yes, the police looked for me. In one opportunity, they went to somewhere I was before one of the marches, and they said like, where is she? They had my ID, like my ID number, and said like, where's Federica? Obviously that day I was terribly scared. The day after I left the country, I was out for about a month, and then came back. It was really hard, because when I left the country, even people started like writing text messages to my father, like, we know she's a liar, we're gonna kill her, we know where you live. So it was, wow, that was the worst moment ever. But we left, we like, I tried to spend some time out of here, and wait until everything was calmer, and then came back and started helping again. But when I came back, in one of the marches, the third or fourth march in which I was present after I came back, I had an accident in one of the marches, and my foot broke in four. So then I had surgery twice, and I wasn't able to be on the field for a lot of time. So I think at the same God was like, kind of, hey, stay home for a while.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't know that.
The whole experience was like, oh my God, like I grew up a lot there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you're extremely brave. I don't know if in your situation I would have been able to pull myself together like that. I probably would have stayed home and and just waited.
The thing of how much of the difference we were making there was much more powerful than any fear.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. That's impressive.
Yeah.
We need more people like you, for sure.
Thank you.
No, I mean that. What can you tell us about, obviously, experiencing being a medical student under those circumstances must have been extremely difficult. But what kept you going?
Well, I always wanted to be a doctor. since I was born. My mom always jokes and says that before I said mom, I said medicine. So yeah, I always had that dream. And being at school, of course, it was hard seeing how they were there without any salary, because the salary is like, it's funny. It's just they're. I just thought they're giving us their best, and this is my dream, so I just have to keep going. Hello,
Yes, I hear
you
you.
there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I lost you for
lost
like a second, but then you came back. Can you say that the last thing that you said one more time? Because that's when I lost you.
Well, I was saying that I always wanted to be a doctor. My dad's a doctor as well. And it was impressive for me how our teachers were there, willing to teach us all of their knowledge, not receiving anything in exchange because their salaries are funny. I mean, it's ridiculous what they earn, but they were still there. And the difference we could make in our patients at the hospital was amazing. Even without the most basic resources, these doctors were there every day. They were giving their best to their patients, were giving their best to their students. And I felt like uh, I have to do this. I have to finish my career and then keep up with my medicine studies. And I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to inherit all of this goodwill that I'm receiving from these doctors.
Towards the end of the film, when you said, I'm going to go finish my studies and then I'm going to come back and give back to my community, I thought, that's great, but I hope she doesn't go back. That, selfishly, I thought for you, like, hope she doesn't go back. She's been through so much, but you did go back.
But I, I, I do wish to come. I haven't gone to finish my studies where I want to go and do my master's and everything. But I do want to come back. I feel like I grew up here. I love this country. It has given me so much.
You don't get in trouble for doing any of this, right?
I did get in trouble several times back in the protests, but I think nowadays I'm focused more on helping the hospital. I'm working at a hospital here in Caracas, one of the biggest. Um, and I hope bad people don't watch these interviews because I might get in trouble again. But
no.
I don't think, I don't think they will mess with people who's helping this much at the healthcare system. Not today.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, with everything that you guys are doing and with the little resources that you have, you think they need your help, you know?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard when you watch your patients suffer and like, I know what I should do. I have the knowledge to cure this disease or whatever, or stop their pain, but I just don't have the tools. It's really hard.
That must be so frustrating. I can't
Yes, it is
imagine.
mostly emotionally draining, but they still need help, so we need to be there for them.
Most definitely. Can can anyone in Venezuela become a doctor? Like, is that a choice that they allow for everybody?
Well, if you get to the university, you can do your studies and get your degree.
Right. The
It,
reason why I ask is because I'm not Venezuelan. Although I've had family and friends live there, not currently, but for many years. I was born in Cuba, and there you can only become a doctor if you've proven yourself to be politically affiliated. So that's why I was
oh, no,
asking, like, if you guys had rules like that.
well, when I got into the university, I did it through the test that you have to, like, you take a test and
Mm-hmm.
either you pass or fail and you get in or not.
Right.
I think that has changed and now is something based with the government, like you have to subscribe to a web page in which you fill a form, and I don't really know how it's working nowadays, but it's something like that.
Interesting. Um, Thank you for sharing that, because I tried to, figure that out on my own, and it was difficult. The
You're
information doesn't
most wel-
seem to be very uh, open.
no, not reachable.
No, exactly. Yes, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Um, what do you think the whole world sees all the human rights issues going on in Venezuela, especially through your profession? What do you think that, what impact do you think that has had for everybody else watching?
Well, as I always say, this channel are the most valuable thing that anyone can give to Venezuela right now, because it is the path to create awareness of what is happening and show the world what's going on here. It's no secret that the healthcare system is broken, and everything else is broken as well. But I work on the in the healthcare system, so it's really important for us to the world to watch. And it's impressive how people from all parts of the world who get to know what's happening, like empathize so much with us, and they all start worrying and like, how can we help you, what's the situation, how's the humanitarian aid coming in, are you receiving medicines, and all kinds of help that they would like to send. So that's amazingly powerful, just to spread the word and people start knowing what's going on and trying to help in any way possible. I think that's the most powerful thing that we have right now.
Right, that was gonna be my next question. How can people help today? Even with like medicines, can people send medications? Is there an organization that allows this to happen?
Yeah, there are several like NGOs that receive medicine, and they distribute it through different hospitals and communities where they lack everything, like even water, and they have a lot of parasite infections, viruses, bacteria. So they can send medicine. There's like couriers and stuff that bring them to Venezuela, and it's not as hard as it was before.
So you actually see the supplies getting to the people. They don't get
When they
lost and
get through
missed.
when they get through different NGOs that help with this, yes, I have seen it with my own eyes. Even with the Green Cross, we received a lot of medicines that were so useful for the people here, not only for the protests and marches, but also to the communities that, as I was saying, lack every basic resource. So I have seen how help has come into the country and has been delivered to the people who are most in need.
That's good news, at least.
That's
Um,
that's sorry, just to plug into the last point of Federica. Like I think that's something that I would want to add, because in the
mhm.
previous statement, you had asked me a little bit about what, sort of the lack of hope coming out of, change, not necessarily coming after Guaido's movement, in at the end of our film. But and I think that a lot of people seeing that change hasn't happened could come away like, oh my God, like, all right, whatever, like Venezuela's done, it's a dictatorship, like, yeah,
Yeah,
nothing more to see here. But that's actually not the case. Actually, change has happened, and I think one of the biggest changes that, and Federica's kind of mentioning that or discussing it a little bit, is that since that whole showdown with the humanitarian aid and the whole Guaido thing, a lot some humanitarian aid channels have been opened up going into the country, through various NGOs, and I think with the help of the UN. And so that is something that has improved, and that's been as a result of a lot of the international pressure and work that's been done by, obviously organizations within Venezuela, but also sort of their international partners, like Human Rights Watch and all that. So I think it's important to know that, all the help, or to re-emphasize that all the help that is pushed, that is done, all the donations, whether it's medicine or whatever, it is actually making an impact, and change, and it's getting better. Or I'll leave the ultimate better or worse statement for, maybe Federica or someone who has more close on the ground, but the ability for supplies to make their way into the country has improved. over the
Yes.
past few years, and that's a big victory.
Yes, it has definitely.
So you would definitely, at least in that area, say that there's been an improvement from when you started in 2017 to now?
As receiving aid from outside, from different organizations that send us directly to NGOs, yes,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Not as in the healthcare system per se,
Right.
like medicines from the hospitals or ambulatories or whatever, but from NGOs who are working on getting help to the most in need.
Yeah, that's, like I said, at least that's some good news that's
Yes.
come out of all of this. Before I let you go, Federica, though, I do want to congratulate you again for your amazing work. It's incredible what you were able to do with so little and under such stressful circumstances. So I'm
Thank you.
sure. No.
And it was not on my own. I mean, this was the work, the hard work, and the effort of more than 200 people that were working every day tirelessly, even in the harshest conditions. But they are as amazing as you think I am. They have the merit of working as hard as I did. So it's a teamwork.
That's amazing. We're all in awe of all of you. So hope to hear from all of you at some point at in the field that you're in. I'm sure you will all accomplish great things.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for the space.
Absolutely. It's an honor and a pleasure. So I'll return to you, gentlemen, since I know Federica has to go. Let's go back to the political climate in Venezuela and what you witnessed through the film. It was really interesting to see the political perceptions. What I mean by that is we see so many people, like we mentioned earlier, just out in the streets advocating for democracy and human rights. But then at the same time, you see some people who are celebrating Maduro's achievements. How is that? How did you correlate those two?
I guess think about that a little bit. We, as documentarians and filmmakers, our goal was to be a channel for what was happening in Venezuela and to digest information to put it into an hour and a half. That was like our homework, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the characters that you see in the film, the four primary characters, are the characters that not only were willing to show up in the film, but also whose story represented the reality the most. You know, we have secondary characters that maybe were more pro Maduro, like Edgar, but Edgar made it to the film because it just happened to make it to the film, you know, because we wanted to interview all type of people, all voices of society. But in reality, the people that want to speak from Maduro and are willing to do it and are willing to go forward with that story are very little, you know. So we didn't really pick a side of the story, you know. And as a filmmaker, you have to put your voice in there. But we were a channel for reality. So you know, we went to the street when as soon as we got the information from an event, we went to the street, you know, and we didn't necessarily take opposition or pro Maduro. We just like went out, you know. So in the footage we got that made the film is the footage that represented the reality, you know. So you know, the reality is that people came out in masses to protest against the government. And the things that we show pro-government, you know, personally, I know most of those things are structured to show the world that there is still support on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many ways that those things happen, but in reality, what makes the film is the reality. You know what I mean? I don't know how to go around that a little bit more like obvious, but yes, it was difficult to get those voices that represented pro Maduro side.
Jenny, sorry to interrupt, but
No.
now I really have to. I have a patient, but I wanted to thank you for the space and everything and the attention in Venezuela. Also, Max, Nelson, thank you always. And well, keep in touch.
Mucho gusto,
Thank you,
Federica.
Federica.
Gracias.
Federica.
Igualmente, nos vemos pronto.
Un
Saludos.
abrazo, cuídate.
Igual.
the truth is, you go out to Venezuela, and most people want change. Like, at
Hmm.
least that's what we saw. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yes, there are still people who support Maduro. Yes, there are still people who believe in the legacy of Chavez and Maduro. I'm not saying those people don't exist, but what I am saying is we sent out crews to see what was out there
Hmm.
and what people were saying, and the overwhelming majority that we found, even if they were former Maduro supporters, or even if they still kind of had some connection with the government, overwhelming majority want to change. And I think that that's what we represented in our documentary, like Nelson was saying. And that's the reason why you mostly see those voices, is because they're the ones that are everywhere that we
Hmm.
found. That's not to say that the other side doesn't exist. It's just, we kind of represented in our film what we were able to find out there. And we did want to keep a voice for the government. Like, we did try to show Randall's father and family, and we did try to show Edgar, and we did try to show a little bit of the mentality of why people support
Right.
that so much. And I think the example of Randall's father was really, really good. I mean, having that life-saving surgery for his mother,
Hmm.
and when they could never have afforded that, which was paid for by Chavez and the oil profits. I mean, that is, she owes her life to those social programs, which unfortunately were unsustainable. But regardless, what where would I mean, think about it. If you
Yeah.
were to put yourself in those shoes, where would your loyalty end, or where would your support end if you're literally owe your life to this person, this government, and this political party? So I think that's a good understanding or good insight into why there is certain loyalty that is just like so rock solid.
Right. I mean, I think you put it perfectly, and that's why I asked you that question because I feel like that's what makes this documentary stand out. Obviously, anyone else could have just focused on one side because it can be uh, left unsaid that the Maduro supporters are, quote unquote, bad guys or whatever. They're against democracy and people's rights. But the fact that you put the example of Randall's father and his mother, I think that made it so real and so powerful because in Venezuela and countries that deal with a dictatorship, you do have those instances where people stand for those systems for whatever reason. In his case, it was for healthcare. So that was, at least to me, that was extremely valuable information. And it was also heartbreaking to see Randall how much he was struggling against a system that was taking everything away, but his father was grateful for, or it seems like he was grateful for.
Yeah. I don't know if we
Unfortunately,
still have
that's the
Nelson. Oh, there he is. We do. Sorry, Nelson, you're
most.
frozen.
I think am I lagging? Maybe.
A little.
Randall's story, the story. Randall's story is the story of all of them, like where the day to day becomes difficult to survive, but also you have a family member who loves and supports the government. In every Venezuelan family, there's somebody who benefits from the government, and you cannot talk about politics. That's just like a rule. I've lost uncles and
Oh, wow.
friends because you just don't debate that anymore. You just kind of like accept it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you move on. Everybody has a different opinion, and if you are pro government or not, you know that there's some kind of benefit. And people make decisions. And you can't really question that. Unfortunately, some people decide to live with it, and then it just makes it extend. That's the problem.
Right. I wonder how they rationalize that because, I'm sure Randall's father can look around and see his son struggling or see how they can't put food on the table. So it's interesting to think about how people in those positions would rationalize where their loyalty lies.
It's a little bit of. I guess I could give you a personal story. Like in my family, I think most of Venezuela wanted to change. Because we came from the party system, and then it's very corrupt, and then the poverty level was rising. I don't know, like health system. Actually, the health system was always strong because I come from a lot of doctors in my family, so they're always like, nah, the health system is worse now. But the structure of socialism in Latin America always wanted to change in Venezuela. It was years, decades before Chavez came, before it was actually implemented. So Chavez represented that opportunity. Fortunately, it turned out wrong. But I have an uncle who was part of social movement. It's like a great uncle in the 70s. And even till this, he's a professor, graduated wherever. He has a master's in wherever. And he's really freaking smart. And he loves Chavez and Maduro. And it's just
Wow.
like, we don't see him anymore, because my whole family is like, are you kidding me? Like where we are. So, and he doesn't benefit. He doesn't care about the money. He just cares about the ideal. So it's a lot of brainwashing along the way and a lot of social programs that benefit people that have no choice. These people that choose to vote for the government that get food have no choice. So can't question that.
Right. Wow, that's crazy and unfortunately very common. Um,
Very common.
yeah, so many families get broken up over these ideas and these programs. Um,
As a cool, I like similar, very similar.
yeah. I wonder when Chavez came into power, um, did you guys see a lot of like Cuban influence into like taking over the government?
Yes, a lot. There's some official information and some unofficial. I don't know where the line is in my head
Right.
because maybe I have too much information. But I know for a fact when Chavez had a coup in 2002, he went to Cuba for backup. That's
Mhm.
where that's where a lot of the trade of, I don't know, military intelligence started. I don't know the line, but I know for now, like for a fact now, every social program where you have to notarize everything notarized is controlled by Cuban intelligence. But I don't know when it started. I got there, like you get that's official information. I don't have it, but there's a lot of trade of what do you call it? Like systematic structure. Cool.
Right. Yeah. It's a shame. It's like a sickness that's spread. It's awful. Um sorry. Why do you think this systems of socialism and quote unquote dictatorships have been able to grow in Latin America? I know that's a big question.
That is a crazy question.
Sorry. We can take it
Um,
out if you don't feel comfortable answering
No,
it.
Max can handle it. He got it.
okay. I really don't know the answer. This is something that most people, I don't know anyone could interpret to know the and understand the answer to this, but I think what the type of socialism that you see in Latin America, it's like its own brand of socialism, right? It's very much like it's not the same type of socialism that you perhaps see in other countries that
Mhm.
um implement, like sort of high taxes or high like redistribution like wealth redistribution
Mhm.
programs and all that. It's a different type, and I think that that's important to understand what we and it's also important to sort of decide what we mean when we say socialism, because there's socialism, there's communism, there's Marxism, and then there's all these flavors of it. So I
Right.
think it's kind of important to delineate what we're saying when we say that, right? There are socialist programs that are really just about, the idea of sort of more socially minded programs that are about, taking from imposing taxes or using sort of excess wealth at the top and redistributing it to the lower parts of society that aren't benefiting, the least off parts of society that aren't benefiting as much, or that aren't able to sort of provide for themselves. And that's okay. I think those are programs. There are countries that have implemented those types of programs very well. But then there's like the sort of intense, like sort of revolutionary socialism, right? That is what we're looking at here with Chavez, and why it's been able to be so successful in Latin America. I mean, the only hazard I could guess, and this is like I'm just shooting in the dark, and hopefully this is not super fucked up, but like the history of colonialism.
Yeah.
I think that I think if you look at where Russia and Eastern Europe was and where Russia was at the end of the Middle Ages, they were dealing with they were one of the issues they had economically was there was a very strong iron-fisted elite class that was basically completely like um uh taking advantage and like forcing cheap labor to just like make them rich. And that was what Eastern Europe and Russia actually dealt a lot with historically. They didn't really go through the same sort of commercial economic sort of diversification that Western Europe did. And I think that part of what Western Europe got, with all our history, what Western Europe did with its wonderful legacy of colonialism, it essentially created a similar system in its colonies, where it basically exploited the crap out of all of Latin Central America, including Mexico. And it sort of enslaved the local population to completely fund its own wealth. And that is historically documented. I mean, the Industrial Revolution and the sort of all that 17, 18, 1900s of Europe would not have happened without what the colonial wealth that they extracted from Latin America. But I think that that type of activity, lots of people being subjugated at the hand of a few, creates a certain mentality, anger, frustration that builds over time, and that can make the idea of revolutionary socialism very appealing. You know what I mean? Like there's, why, this idea of a meritocracy, this idea of who deserves what, you know, I guarantee you that Latin America did not deserve to be exploited. All the sort of empires that were there that existed did not deserve what got to them. So this idea that we have to take what we have to undo these systems of
Right.
exploitation and class that have put us where we are is appealing. The problem is do the people who use those ideas to build power and to get in power truly believe in them and want to see them through, or are those people using powerful ideas to put themselves in power? And I think that's where it starts to get a little tricky. I think Chavez came in with what he said was really important. Nelson can tell you Venezuela had a lot of people with a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and then a bunch more people that didn't have a lot, and the people were being exploited for a very long time, through a political and economic elite. And then Chavez appealed to that suffering and that frustration. That was very powerful. And it was right. He was correct. You know what I mean? In the sense that he was addressing a serious problem that Venezuela had. He didn't, instead of maybe perhaps solving that problem,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of just put himself at the top and then continued to exploit the system for himself and the people close to him for a while, or in an irresponsible way. And I think Maduro really solidified that legacy. So I don't know. That's like a really like crazy
No, no,
filmmaker,
I like that.
documentary
I
guy's
think
answer.
no, no, Max. I think he gave like a whole like really important structure, because without the history of what happened in Latin America, there's no today, and today to me, where these systems of, like structure backed by the left idea, when
Yeah.
it's not a true left, this is not a true social democracy, it's just a name.
Mm-hmm.
Our systems that are created for people to depend on, in Latin America, unfortunately, because the literacy level that we have, we are dependent, we are a dependent community, and when the dependency becomes so strong that it's survival, then that's when it's taken advantage on, if you compare it to the dependency that you have in countries from the first world, people could have some type of dependency, but also there's a possibility of upward mobility, that doesn't exist in Latin America. You have to live day to day, and that's what they do. They crush the opportunity for people to move or to even migrate, and then there's no choice, So it's just a way, the same people that Chavez took out, that was like a small group of people controlling the whole government and the whole country. he put in. You know, now it's a smaller group, and unfortunately, it works worse. You know, and it's the same thing that happened in Cuba, where yes, there was problems. Yes, there was illiteracy, and you know all these things that the revolution was fighting for, and it was beautiful on paper. But when it comes to the reality, it's like what is actually happening. You know, if we can't really choose who rules our country, you know. So to me,
Yeah.
it's a dependency thing, you know.
Yeah, I think
But it
you
comes from the history that of what happened in Latin America, you know.
right. I think that you both answered that perfectly because the more you think about this, you know, it does boil down to our history and the fact that you know, you look at Europe and Eastern Europe, and they've had hundreds and hundreds of years to adjust and you know, quote unquote, get over their historical issues that they carry their baggage from generation to generation. But we're not there yet. And the fact that you have these politicians being able to pinpoint what the issue is in society and make all these promises, it makes us vulnerable, I think. I don't know.
I
I
also think
agree
that
with that.
if there's also the history of our indigenous people,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
It's some of the tribes because the Caribes, you know, like I just remember because I was sure that we're nomads, you know, and then we're one of the only indigenous in Latin America who weren't able to be like controlled, you know, because they were always moved, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So Caracas was always known like as a dangerous valley before the Spaniards came, you know. So because of all the hot blood that exists in the Caribbean, I feel like it's easy, you know, to create chaos. You know, and chaos is easy to control.
Right.
You know, it's a different type of tribe, you know. But I mean, I'm actually excluding like Mexico, you know, Northern Americas and Southern Americas. But this conversation that we're having lives strongly in the Caribbean. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Um, Thank you for trying to answer that question. I know that wasn't the simplest question, but
That's difficult.
I had to ask you because I honestly think about this all the time, believe it or
Jenny,
not.
Jenny, we've done a lot of interviews, and that was the hardest question
Really?
by far I've ever been asked. Oh my God,
Oh,
that is
I'm
so
going to take that as
difficult.
a
That is such a hard.
compliment.
That was difficult.
That is a really hard question. You could ask
That's a
anyone that,
difficult.
and they'd be like, "Okay, hold on, give me a second here."
Yeah.
That is
And I
hard.
have asked that question to other people, and I have to say, your answers both have been the one that makes the most sense. So thank you.
Thank you.
You know your stuff, obviously. I wanted to quickly touch upon
Right.
the clap boxes. Am I getting the name correct? Was it clap? The food
Yeah,
boxes?
what's
Claro.
¿Se dice así?
Sí,
Okay.
pero déjame ver qué significa porque creo que es un
it's an
acronismo.
acronym. I
See,
never
it's
remember
an
it.
acronym, and I did not write that down. Like I have like a bajillion notes here, and I did not put that down. I just put the clap box.
I'll look it up. Los comités locales de abastecimiento y producción.
Okay. Sí.
Sí, like, básicamente, no sé, you want to take on this, Max? Or I could do it too, either way. I mean, like, La Caja Clap is basically all this conversation we had boils down to like that box. You know what I mean?
That's
The
why I
idea
wanted to bring up
of
the box.
dependency. Yeah, it's dependency, it's systematic, like need for the people,
Mhm.
and then on the other side you have the government saying like, look, we are providing 6 million clap boxes that help. Okay, the clap is just a box that has the basic need for a family to sustain for a month. I believe I forgot the time, but I don't know. It's like 2 kilos de arroz, like oil, like the most basic.
Right.
And then supposedly it could feed over like 6 million people, 6 million. I can't remember if it's people or families. But the boxes don't come to everybody. They only come to the people that own a specific ID for the government. So basically the loyal government supporters. And it doesn't always come in consistent times, you know. So that's the product. but behind the product, there's all these companies that are just money laundering with the government money, to create opportunity, to create a systematic need for the people, and that's how
Right.
Venezuela works.
Yeah,
That's
it seems
just
like
one of
como
the
que
things that
crean la escasez de la comida y después te dan la solución. Oh, it's okay. You'll get a clap box for, so you can feed your family. But then you don't realize
yeah,
that you're going hungry because of the government issues. Or I'm sure they do
yeah,
realize that's why they're out in the street.
Yeah, there's a deep irony if you look at it all, because like Chavez and Maduro, like part of what they said they wanted was to sort of relinquish the chains of the West in a way. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like Chavez had nothing but hate and frustration publicly, at least, um, for like America and Western
Right.
Europe and capitalism and all that. And so his whole thing was like, let's be free of these chains, basically, of capitalism in the West. And ironically, he took on policies that only made Venezuela more dependent on these other economies and Western functioning economies. And I think the food is a perfect example where like Venezuela's own food producing industries have been bankrupt or run into the ground or incapable. And so most of the food has to be imported from outside of the country, readily packaged. And that's what the clapbox ends up being. And that's what Hausman is talking about in our documentary. And so even less like it's not a it's they're not at all independent. In fact, they're reliant on the sort of functioning markets of the surrounding countries in the world. But what they are creating is a system of control internally, right, as well. Um, and that is basically food for loyalty, food to be quiet, even though it's inconsistent and it's inconsistent and it's of poor quality.
Right. Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly because there is that dependency and people who have, you have a family, you have kids, you're going hungry. Are you really going to turn away a box? Must be a difficult situation and position to be in. About Leopoldo Lopez, he's such a big part of the story and um not to say the first, but what seems like one of the first people to really be able to bring people together. What was it like to document his story?
I think one thing, our first thing was, okay, we have access to this Leopoldo story, let's do it. And this is great because he's just so um, significant.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, um, it's like the opposition in the story is bigger than Leopoldo, right? And that was one thing that when we first started this documentary, it was hard to document a subject who was in prison. He was in prison when we first started this documentary. It was like hard to get an interview. Um, and then the second thing is, part of the whole thing is making this about Venezuela, the people, not just the political elites, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, if we made about Venezuela a documentary all about Leopoldo, we're sort of like contradicting the mission in the form of what we're making. And Nelson was Nelson being very attuned to all this was like, I can't tell how much Nelson's here because he keeps breaking up a little bit in the corner,
He
but
froze for
um,
me. Oh no,
um,
he's back.
he's back. Okay,
yeah.
but
Okay,
Nelson was
I'm listening.
very tuned to making the story larger than Leopoldo, which thank God, that was his instinct because that, it would have been a very different documentary from the outset. Because just to feedback on the process, when I first started this project, I didn't know much about Venezuela, at least deeply, and so I
Mhm.
kind of had to learn over time, and then I obviously now much more understanding. But at the outset, really leaned on Nelson for his understanding. But getting to know Leopoldo was amazing. I mean, I think one thing that I learned through the process of working closely with Leopoldo and talking with him is that he's very dedicated and he doesn't sleep. You know what I mean? He's doing this every day, all day, wakes up. This is what breathes and dreams of. And that type of dedication in a person is unique and amazing. But the other thing that you learn is that this is really hard. Like what they're doing, not just Leopoldo, but what the entire opposition is trying to do is really, really, really hard to dislodge a dictatorship that's in a way fighting for its very life and that has control over a vast intelligence structure, support from countries like Russia and China and Iran. And not to say that there's anything wrong with those countries, it's more that they have support. They're not just on
Right.
an island. um, and so what they're trying to do is really hard. And so I think sometimes Leopoldo makes mistakes, sometimes other leaders in the opposition have made mistakes. Sometimes they get it wrong, sometimes they get it right, but it's like it's really hard to fight a dictatorship when you don't have any freedom. And it's really easy to make mistakes because very few people have ever fought this type of thing before. So I think that and I know this conversation's kind of become my answer has kind of become a larger thing than just Leopoldo, but I think I learned to believe that Leopoldo truly wants what's best for Venezuela. And I think he fights really hard for that. And even if that's not what's best, or even if that doesn't align with all the other opposition leaders, I truly believe in his motives, and his motives are pure. And that goes for a lot of the other opposition leaders. Not all of them, of course. So I think, if anything, what I learned is just you have to celebrate their dedication. You have to, praise them for it, and just understand that they're not may have not gotten it right yet, but I can guarantee you that they're not going to stop until they do.
Yeah, it's impressive the way he just perseveres, he just keeps going. It's incredible that one person can have that kind of dedication. Because I don't think it's the normal thing
It's
would have been to say, okay, I tried, I'm moving on, you know?
I will say, and this should be said more often, um, is the only reason he's able to do that is because of his wife,
Mhm.
because of his family, and because of his mom, because of his dad. Like they are rock solid for him. You know what I mean? His whole family, and particularly Lillian, obviously,
Yeah.
um, and what she allows him to be able to do. Because she's out there fighting every day. She's got 3 kids. You know what I mean? She said she's had to raise and is raising. Um, and she's 100% the reason Leopoldo's able to be who he is. And so I think, we try to feature her a little bit, but because she works more with human rights,
Mhm.
wasn't want to be as politically affiliated at all times. And so we
Right.
had to be sensitive to that during the filming of our project. Things have changed a little bit now. But I think it's, if when you say the word Leopoldo Lopez is amazing, you also have to follow it up with Lilian Tintori is also amazing because she's the only reason that he's able to do what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because, the little bit that she is in the film, you can tell that she's a badass, for lack of a better adjective, you know? She's one strong lady, so
Oh
that
yeah.
they're incredible family.
Is
I
actually one of the first subjects that we filmed because Leopoldo was in prison.
Mhm.
We wanted to follow his story, and Lilian was the first link to the whole documentary. She was very willing to help us, and we followed her at the beginning. And once she started showing up in the street, we knew something was happening, and then we activated the crew. And 2 weeks passed, and then the big protest started. Also, want to give a shout out to Nixon, like Leopoldo, and like many students that protest, many opposition leaders. This is people that gave their life for us. And I think, like personally, I would say that as we were making this project that was so difficult, I would talk to them. We would talk to them, and then I would just be humbled, and reminded that we actually have it very easy. We want
Right.
to vote, we go vote. Even if the person that we vote doesn't win, the country doesn't fall apart. So, we have food. I don't know. We have like systems
Yeah.
that protect us. So I was constantly reminded that my problems were small next to their problems.
That's so true. It puts everything into perspective,
Right.
right? Um, any future projects for the two of you that you'd like to discuss?
I don't know, Max. I don't know. Yeah, we talk here and there. Me and Max and Marcus. There's a third partner that was part of this project. He helped with a lot of production and basically keeping this boat together.
Mm-hmm.
We went separate ways after the pandemic, and I'm sure like me and Max will work on something like down the line, you know. But right now I'm in Colombia. I'm actually doing like I'm trying to build a whole universe in the fiction world. So I wrote a film and I'm shooting a teaser right now. I just finished it. So yeah, I'm ideally I want to keep the conversation going around certain topics of immigration and like I don't know Latin America and problems. I don't know. Hopefully, the next three films I could do here and just ground myself first here, and then whatever comes next. That's where I'm at.
I'm in my next project is not going to be anything on the level of what we just did on Venezuela. It's a slightly different topic. It's more in the sports arena. That's intentional. Coming out of A La Calle and coming out of what we did, I'm just like don't know if I can go into another like serious in-depth
Right.
project like that. I need something a little lighter, not
Yeah.
just in terms of subject matter, but like as a beginning and an end, that I understand on the outset. And I say that half jokingly and half serious, um, like of course, if and Nelson and I have said this before, like okay, if there needs to be another film in Venezuela or something important happens, someone calls us and is like, yo, you got to go do this, or we want you to do this. Okay, answer the call. We love, I mean, we're there. I'm there. But barring anything like that, I wouldn't choose to go into something like that because it's just a very, very intense process to get to know people as close as we have, and to know still to this day the film is done. It's about to go out, and they're still suffering. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we still get phone calls and we still have text message from people we know still suffering and struggling, and that's very hard. And I don't want to talk about how hard it is for me. I just don't know that
Mm-hmm.
it is harder for them obviously because they're in that situation. But what I mean to say is like it's still difficult emotionally and psychologically for me. And I think that I don't know that I'm going to rush into another project that puts me there. I need a little bit of time to recover, and I'm just being honest. But the future, hopefully, my next immediate project will be a little bit lighter, more in the sports world, and it will also be a documentary. And yeah, I can't really talk about much more than that because otherwise
Of
I'll
course.
get in trouble.
Yeah. No, no. Let's not do that. Um, what do you think about the future of Venezuela based on everything you've learned through this documentary, through making this documentary, I should say?
That's probably as difficult as the other answer, but I would say I think I'm going to answer as a Venezuelan and not as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think we will see change. It's gonna be slow because the structure of Chavismo has engraved itself into like the roots of of the social and like structural economic every single power of Venezuela. So it will take years, decades possibly, but I would say every Venezuelan loves Venezuela. So I don't think we would allow this to go forever. You know, the
Right.
problem is that all sectors of society have to kind of like come to the table. And I think it's just a matter of time, patiently waiting. A lot of colleagues can't even go back to the country. So, we're together in this fight, but I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see some important change for sure.
God willing, yes. Yeah.
I don't know how, but we all feel it, we all feel it.
I think your
I don't know what Max
film is
wants to say.
definitely a step forward for sure because you're able to open up, a whole world to everybody and not just Venezuelans. Anybody can connect to this film, which is what makes it so special in my opinion. I think what you guys did is, and you've probably heard this already, but it's more than a documentary. You've uh, documented such an important time in history, and I would say in human history, not just Venezuelan history, because you really showed how people can really come together when they need to, and you see the human spirit in those people just not being crushed no matter the circumstances, and that's so special.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Thank
definitely
you.
a compliment. And I hope there's 10 other documentaries about Venezuela.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to head out.
No problem. I will let you both go. Thank you so much for spending an hour. Oh my goodness, more than an hour with me. Wow. Whenever you're in Miami, you're welcome to, join us in the studio. And
Soon.
oh, I lost you.
I have another meeting to jump in.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Max. As I was saying, if you guys are ever in Miami, you're welcome to come over to the studio, and we can actually meet like normal human
Thank you,
people.
Jenny.
Awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll do.
Best
We'll
of
stop by.
luck with the film.
Thank you so much.
The documentary film A La Calle is now available on HBO Max. It is a film that tackles the realities of the Venezuelan people over the last couple years. Make sure to check it out and let us know what you think in a comment down below. We also want to dedicate this episode to all of the Venezuelan people and everybody across the globe who's dealt with an oppressive regime. Thank you once again, and see you next time.